Tilehurst End podcast by Reading fans for Reading fans.
Hello and welcome to the Tilehurst End weekend preview. We're into the home straight now after the international break with 8 games left to play in Reading's relegation battle, beginning with a tough-looking fixture against the Championship's form team at Preston North End on Saturday. My name is Olly Allen, your host for today's show, and I'm pleased to say that I'm joined by the Wokingham paper's Tom Crocker. How's it going, Tom?
Not too bad, thank you. Carrying a bit of a cold, but I think I should be able to manage it through the podcast today, hopefully.
It's of course now when the relegation battle really starts to hot up. As I said, no more international breaks, just to focus on these 8 games to try and avoid the drop to League One. Over the course of the international break, the relegation battle potentially might have gained a new member. Of course, Birmingham City deducted 9 points by the EFL for breaching profitability and sustainability rules, which means they have dropped to 18th in the Championship. Just 5 points above the relegation zone. So that's 4 points above Reading. I mean, is this a good thing or a bad thing for Reading, Tom? Obviously, opinion seems to be quite split on this. I think, on the one hand, it brings in one more team into the mix, another team that could go down instead of Reading. But on the other hand, obviously, Reading play Birmingham on the final day of the season, and there could suddenly be a lot riding on that game now.
Yeah, I think I'd go with the first one. I think it's better to have more teams down there. Obviously, that final game, you're not too sure just yet whether Reading will be sort of down or safe by then anyway. So I think it's for the fact that Birmingham will be down there. They've got a tough run of games coming up as well, Birmingham, so they could easily get dragged in even more over the next few weeks. I think, you're not sure either how that's going to affect them sort of mentally either. They were sort of up near around the playoffs, and suddenly they're battling against relegation now, so it's going to be tough probably for the squad to take. And I think it's just a good thing to get another team. They'll probably be okay. They've got the quality to stay up, you'd imagine. Yeah. But even if it does come down to that final day, you'd imagine Birmingham will probably be safe by then anyway. So I don't think it'll make too much difference on that front. And just having another team down there who could potentially get dragged in, I think is never a bad thing. Especially as some of the teams down the bottom now seem to be starting to pick up a few points recently. So if Birmingham they've got I think some of the top 4 still to play in the next few weeks, I think. So they could easily get dragged in even more, like I say, and make it even more of a bigger relegation battle, which I think can only benefit the teams that are down there at the moment.
They've got a very good squad, Birmingham. Obviously, they've done well enough to get to where they are. I think they were probably down the bottom towards the beginning of the campaign, but have progressed throughout the season. And someone like Che Adams, who I think has been nominated for the Championship Player of the Season this week. I think that shows you the quality that they've got in their squad. So they should be okay. But as you mentioned, all of their remaining games are sort of, with teams with something to play for. They've got, I think, 4 of the teams they've still got left to play are fighting for promotion. Sort of 4 of them are fighting down the bottom. So that could potentially put them in jeopardy. Obviously, we've mentioned quite a few times that sometimes it's the mid-table teams who have nothing to play for at this stage of the season, sort of are the best sides to play. And Birmingham don't really have many of those to play. So I think especially when they come to face the sides down the bottom who are fighting for their lives, potentially that there could be an awful lot riding on that final game. But Preston, Reading's opponents at this weekend, certainly have something to play for. They're currently 7th in the Championship table, only outside of the playoffs on goal difference following a remarkable recent run, really. I mean, they're currently 12 games unbeaten, which is the second longest unbeaten run any team in the Championship has gone on this season, only beaten by Bristol City and their 13-game unbeaten run earlier this year. Preston have won their last 6 away games, which is a quite incredible record, really. And they're the only Championship side to defeat league leaders Norwich in 2019. And I don't know if it's because this sort of forms perhaps under the radar, because I was a bit surprised when I saw, quite how impressive those stats are. But I think a lot of Reading fans potentially seem to be underestimating Preston here and perhaps overplaying our chances potentially because we're at home. But I think for me this will be a very, very tough game.
Yeah, it's obviously strange because Reading won at Preston early this season and didn't look particularly great at that occasion. But I think last season they did well as well. I think Alex Neil's a good manager and he's got them in and around the sort of top 10, I think, last season as well. And they've put together a good run now and they seem to always be in and around the mix and just seem to miss out. So it's not a huge surprise that they're up near the top half now. I think the fact they've gone 12 unbeaten, 6 away wins in a row, like you say, is an impressive record. But the fact they're up in the top half, I don't think is a big surprise in terms of overplaying the chances. I mean, I think it's just the fans are looking at the home games as the ones where they need to get the points, really. So I think all these final 4 home games are going to be ones that fans look at as potential to pick up the points. But it's going to be an extremely tough game. Obviously, Reading's home form recently has been fairly good, which probably gives a bit of optimism. Obviously, the last home game against the Leeds one, obviously they were well beaten before that against Wigan. They brought a lot of fans back. I'm sure it'll be another big crowd in on Saturday. So yeah, I think they've got the potential to be another great game. But yeah, I imagine Preston will probably fancy their chance of extending their good run. They say they're up near the playoffs for a reason, and it wouldn't be a massive surprise if they ended up sneaking in. I think they'd probably be outsiders to get promoted, but yeah, they'll probably end up sort of in the top 8, I'd imagine now.
It's incredibly tight now. I mean, the Championship is always a fascinating league. With 8 games left, it's so close in there. And obviously, I think you're probably looking all the way down to perhaps Hull in 12th. You've got potential to reach the playoffs. So certainly, sure to be an exciting conclusion, both at the top and at the bottom of the table. But yeah, I think Reading are definitely trying to get more fans in for this game. They've got reduced rates, I think, for this one. So hopefully another good atmosphere at the Medeski Stadium. But Preston are the favourites with the bookmakers for this game, 13-10, the most commonly available odds, with odds checking for the visitors to win, #GambleAware. Meanwhile, Reading are 11-5, and the draw is also 11-5. So quite close odds, really, in theory. But where does this game rank for you, Tom, sort of in terms of difficulty of Reading's remaining fixtures? Because we've mentioned numerous times sort of about how hard the run-in is. We've still got Norwich, West Brom, and Middlesbrough to play. Two of those games away. They're all ranked above Preston currently in the table, whilst Bristol City, Hull, Brentford, and Birmingham are opponents who currently sit below Preston. So sort of middle of the ground for Preston.
Yeah, I think you look at it and there's quite a few of those games, especially the away ones, so I can't see Reading getting anything out of them, really. No. It's just based on what's happened this season already. And if the target they're still talking about is getting 46 points, they've got to win 3 of the last 8 games. So you'd look at it as, I don't know, I suppose Brentford at home, Birmingham at home, and then one of the next 2 you'd imagine, Preston or Hull, I presume. So yeah, home game is probably the one you look at to do that, but I think, like I say, if depending on who the other games are against, this might look like one of the tougher ones, but because of who they've got still left to play, it's one of the ones that I think they have to look at as an opportunity to get some points from. It's going to be, I think it's going to be extremely difficult. Like I say, any team in that sort of form, hopefully maybe the 2-week break has killed their momentum a little bit. That's, I think, something they can maybe try and play on Reading and try and get off to a decent start. But yeah, it's just going to be a tough one, as most of these games seem to be for Reading at the moment, but it's one that they probably can maybe nick something from. But yeah, I think probably.
You sound quite doubtful.
I know. Well, this is just from watching them for the rest of the season, really. But yeah, I think looking at the games, looking down the list now, and I mean Norwich, Bristol City, Middlesbrough, I can't see them getting anything out of those games really. So they're going to have to win. They're going to have to pull out a good win somewhere. I think if they're going to stay up, they're going to have to be one of these bigger sides. I think, or one of these sides that are up there challenging. So I think Saturday could be the one they look at, and it's going to be tough, but yeah, you never know. The home form, like I say, hasn't been too bad aside from that Leeds game recently, so it could be the one where they can snatch the points.
Yeah, I think other than that Leeds game, we haven't lost at home, since New Year's Day against Swansea. But Preston's Brad Potts certainly fancies his side's chances. He's been speaking this week about their game plan for the trip to Reading. I mean, he said it is difficult to break teams down who sit behind the ball, but we are not expecting that from Reading. They need the 3 points, and hopefully that will work to our advantage, giving us the opportunity to hit them on the counter. So he's clearly got a game plan in mind, but he's probably expecting Reading to go for it, which, to be honest, I'm quite surprised about. Really, I mean, I'm not quite sure where he's got that assumption from, because I think Reading actually spend more time in their own third than any other side in the Championship. But how do you think Jose Gomes will approach this one, Tom?
I think they will. I think it's fairly valid point he's making, and I think the home games they will try and attack them. Like I say, they've got to be getting wins now. Draws for the rest of the season won't be enough, as Jose Gomes said after that Stoke game. So they're going to have to try and push for wins at some point. And I think if the opportunity is there with the last sort of maybe 20 minutes to go on Saturday, I think they will push for it. I don't think they'll just settle for a point, especially considering they've got 2 away games coming up afterwards. So obviously they're only, I think, there's 1 point outside the relegation zone still, so they need to pick up the wins sooner rather than later, and I think it could potentially work into Preston's favour. You can see why they'd come and be confident of getting something that Medeski, like I say, they've won 6 away games in a row, and Reading, their form at home this season, like I say, hasn't been too bad, but they've drawn quite a few as well, so Preston will probably fancy they can come and get something, but I think Reading will attack it, possibly, like I say, maybe not straight away from the start, but I think looking at the players they've got on the team, I think they will go for it and try and get those three more home points, which will hopefully give a little bit of a cushion again. So yeah, you can see why Preston will probably say that whenever they face the teams down the bottom, they all need to try and win the games, don't they? It's not like they're facing a mid-table team like you say before, but So yeah, you see Preston it might well play into their hands, but hopefully Reading can get in the lead and then sit back on it maybe rather than doing so from the start. So hopefully it'll be I think if they can get that early goal, it will certainly give them a chance to maybe just defensively they've been quite good recently. I think obviously you got a few clean sheets, a few 0-0s under Gomez, so if they can find something to protect early on, that could play more into their hands than Preston's hopefully.
It makes quite a nice change actually from, I think, usually before when teams play Reading, often someone from their team, usually the manager sort of says how Reading are in a false position, and then they end up beating us quite comfortably. But we've heard the view of a Preston player then, but what are the thoughts of the fans? It's time to find out in the view from the town end.
The view from the town end. What do the opposition think?
View from the town end time now, and with Reading hosting Preston North End at the weekend. I'm pleased to say that I'm joined today by Preston fan James Vickers. How's it going, James?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, Ollie. How are you?
I am very pleased to get back to club football after the international break. Obviously, good couple of results for England, but I'm pleased to get back to the Championship now.
Yeah, definitely, especially with the way we've been playing. It's sort of
less so for us, actually, in fairness. But I'm sort of pleased to sort of try and get out of the fight that we're in. But I think we sort of missed out on talking to each other before the game back in September, which Reading won 3-2. I think I was on holiday at the time, but I think the focus of that chat would have been very different to this one, because I think before that game you were sort of struggling towards the bottom of the table. I think you'd gone to lose the next 3 after that as well, and I think we're bottom of the table at one point if I'm correct. But it's looking very, very different, obviously, for Preston now. A 12-game unbeaten run, I think, as it stands, and only outside of the playoffs on goal difference. I mean, it's been an incredible turnaround. What has that been down to?
Yeah, I think sort of first of all, start of the season, we had, a whole host of injuries. There was sort of a similar period last season as well, which really sort of ultimately cost us playoffs between about sort of the September international break and then about midway through October, we had a real injury crisis. And, at the time last year, we thought, this is just bad luck, a one-off. But exactly the same happened this year, which, 2 seasons in a row, maybe it's just down to sort of bad luck, but maybe there's something to look into it a bit more. So, yeah, key players were sort of definitely a part at the start of the season, really struggled. And I think it was about mid-October, we were bottom of the league, 5 points, sort of getting cut adrift a little. I think at one point we were sort of 4 or 5 points adrift of the teams outside the relegation zone. And, that point I was really fearing the worst, especially as you mentioned the Reading game. Obviously, you were sort of around about the same places as at the time. We played Ipswich around that time, who were down there as well, and just didn't look convincing in any of the games, which was a real worry. From then, obviously, we've got key players back now, and I think at the time, there was quite a few fans, and sort of wrongly in my opinion, thinking that maybe it was time for Neil to go. They were blaming a lack of investment in the summer. With obviously we sort of got quite a lot of money sort of by our standards in for key players last season that wasn't reinvested, and there was quite a negative sort of atmosphere around the club, and that sort of translate onto the pitch as well. So it wasn't a good time for the club at the start of the year, but Alex Neil, credit where credit's due, has really turned it around, galvanised the players. And I think it's no coincidence since the sort of January transfer window where he was able to bring in a few more sort of fresh faces, players that he wanted, that he'd had his eye on for a while, and by his own admissions, that is ultimately where the sort of the turning form picked up. We lost the first game of the year away at Rotherham, a game that was at very hungover on New Year's Day, and it was a drizzling, cold day, sort of as is up in the north of England. And
we got beat 4-1 on New Year's Day, in fairness. I'm not quite sure we can get much worse than that.
Yeah, a little bit better for us then. So, yeah, we got beat. It was sort of at a time where we had sort of a decent-ish defence and midfield out. We just didn't have any forwards fit. So we were playing Graham Burke, who's subsequently gone on loan to Gillingham for the rest of the season, up front. And, he's a decent-ish sort of workhorse, but just doesn't have that quality in the final third for the Championship, unfortunately, and that really told on the day. Another sort of game we could have been 3 or 4 up at half-time, and ultimately Rotherham got a goal just after the break, and we went on to lose. But since then, I sort of especially didn't expect the change in form. Not long after that, we got beat in the FA Cup by Doncaster, and I think that was a real sort of blessing for us, that solely focusing on the league going forwards. And since then, as you mentioned, 12 games, 8 wins, 4 draws and no defeats. And I think the the joint second fewest goals conceded in the league at that point. I think only Norwich are ahead of us in the form guide over the last 12. So came out of absolutely nowhere. But yeah, we seem to have got everyone sort of singing on the same hymn sheet, so to speak. There's a great feeling around the club again, and Alex Neil's really got the players playing for him.
I was going to say, because he's got a lot of praise at the moment. Still only 37 years old, which is quite young for a manager at this level. Obviously, one promotion from the Championship with Norwich before. What sort of style is he implementing with the team that sort of made you so impressive recently?
So I think following on from when obviously Simon Grayson left, sort of a year and a half, sort of 2 years ago now, in the summer before last, he didn't come in and, like managers have in the past with different clubs, immediately try and change the whole philosophy at the club. We did well under Grayson in our sort of first year or two back in the Championship, just missing out on the playoffs by about sort of 7 or 8 points, for those first 2 seasons. So we weren't too far off, to be honest. And Neil came in, didn't change too much, kept sort of that core group together and slowly, rather than trying to, rip everything up and start again, slowly has implemented his style. So whereas Grayson sort of had a few critics, and, maybe rightly so at the time, sort of looking back with the attacking sort of talent we had, he was a bit defensive in games in the Championship. And, it's completely understandable for a team that's coming up from League One. You want to, first of all, survive in the league and then look to push on. But I think by the time he got that sort of emphasis on pushing on, it was too late in the season to make a go at the playoffs, and we've been safe for quite a while. So Neil's come in, sort of kept us good defensively, which has, been sort of a real staple of us in the Championship. We're a hard to beat team. Quite a lot of these so-called big boys in the Championship see, a small, so to speak, club like Preston North End and think it'll be, a walk in the park. And we don't make it easy for teams. Obviously, we did for you on the day back in September, but that, we'll put that down to a bad day at the office. But we tend to be hard to beat. And Neil's really got us playing some exciting football going forwards, which I think is where he's sort of improved sort of our side of the game from taking over from Simon Grayson. So whereas under Grayson, we'd look to try and nick a goal 1-0. Nowadays we're not afraid to go to the likes of QPR, for example, who we went there about 2 months ago now and stuck 4 past them. Whereas under Grayson, we would have sat back and been sort of content with a 0-0 or maybe trying to nick a goal on the counter. There's a lot more emphasis on us to come out on the front foot now under Alex Neil, and that sort of confidence is really showing in the players with the way they're playing, sort of a swagger almost that they're sort of knocking the ball around, especially at away games now, and it's just sort of exciting times and a joy to watch, really.
Moving on to the weekend then, what did you make of Reading during that game back in September? Have you seen much of else since then?
Yeah, so obviously speak to Simeon quite a bit. He's a regular on the podcast, and from sort of what I saw, especially in the game in September, and especially over the last couple of weeks, really, obviously the Ipswich game stands out, a massive win. And,
for sure.
Especially then sort of to follow it up. I forget who you were playing at home. I think it was Wigan, wasn't it? Where you got the 2 goals in the last minute. Those, kind of games. I think even at the time you were playing sort of decent attacking football from what I saw when you beat us sort of earlier on in the season. And I think sort of I might have seen that Oliveira may be back fit either this week or next. And obviously that's a massive sort of advantage for you to get him back. And I think if you can get him back, keep scoring the goals like you have done, you seem to have that sort of little bit of momentum on your side in terms of getting points against the teams in and around you, that you should be all right. I think there's worse teams beneath you, even though there's only a few sort of at the moment. I think obviously Ipswich, sort of for all intents and purposes, are sort of good as gone already.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think Bolton and, probably one of the others in that sort of pack around you will probably go. Bolton, obviously, those off-field issues that they've got at the moment, and I think out of the rest of that pack, I think you have the strongest squad.
As for yourselves, who should Reading fans look out for in terms of Preston players at the weekend?
Yeah, so I was sort of thinking about this before I came on. Quite a few of our key players had sort of niggles going into the international break. A couple would have been playing for Ireland, but weren't sort of included in the squad due to sort of injuries. So depending on whether they're fit or not, 2 that immediately stand out for me are Ben Pearson, who's been absolutely fantastic again this season in the middle of the park. Bit of a short fuse at time, probably by his own admission, and Alex Neil, I know, I would say tears his hair out, but he doesn't have any to tear out, and that may be down to the fact of Ben Pearson. But when he's sort of on it, I struggle to think of a better sort of defensive / creative midfielder in the division. Absolutely fantastic sort of on his day. It's just whether he has his sort of mindset right. Sometimes he gets himself overly fired up, even if it's not sort of a derby game or a game in the FA Cup against like a big team where he's out to impress, which, is good in the sense that he cares that much, but, he needs to sort of curb it a little. But if he's on it, one of the best players in the league in the middle of the park, and makes it really difficult for opposition players. And I think that is part of our success over the 6 sort of away wins on the bounce for us. The other one sort of to watch out for, and he's been injured a majority of the season, but sort of coming back now and looks to be getting back to full match fitness. Played for Ireland in midweek, sort of just gone. Shawnee Maguire up front on his day, absolutely rapid, great finisher. Sort of can go either way, and got a trick or two in his locker as well. So getting him back fit just in time for this run-in has been absolutely crucial. We sort of really missed him over the last few weeks, and I think he's been back for 10 of the 12 games into this run, and sort of looking at how many we've scored sort of since then. I think we've scored the 3rd most over the last sort of 12 games. And while he may not get on the score sheet at the moment as much as he likes, that sort of movement opens up space for other players to come in. And sort of quite an impressive thing for us this season is sort of how the goals have been shared out. We don't have one prolific sort of striker, but everyone sort of chips in where they can, and everyone's sort of on about 7 or 8 goals at the moment. So those two definitely stand out for me.
Well, that goal thing was actually interesting, because I think that's one thing that we've struggled a lot this season. Sort of the support from the midfield and the wingers just isn't coming at all. I think behind Bodvarsson and Baldock and Mate, I don't think anyone's scored above 3 or 4 goals this season, which is a lot of our problems. Obviously, Bodvarsson and Baldock are injured at the moment, so you're basically relying on Yaku Mate and Nelson Oliveira, probably not back fit quite yet, but that's really been our problem, I think. Especially sort of in the first half of the season, just no one from the midfield was contributing goal-wise at all. I think we have sort of declined sort of goal-scoring-wise under Jose Gomez, but hopefully Yaku Mate got his first goal against Wigan. I think that was his first goal since November, so hopefully he gets back into form. But finally, then James, can I get a score prediction for the weekend from you?
Yeah, so again, I was thinking of this beforehand. I sort of on form, 6 away wins on the bounce, second in the form table, just outside the playoffs. If I was a neutral, I'd probably put us or Preston on my accumulator if I was sort of going to put one on. But over recent years, the Medeski's been a real sort of ground that we seem to struggle at. Obviously take aside that Leeds result for you a couple of weeks ago. I think you have been getting sort of quite a few wins and draws in your last 5. I think the Leeds result is the only defeat in the last 5.
I think we haven't lost at home since New Year's Day. Excluding that Leeds game, of course.
So form should say that we should sneak it. As an optimistic Preston fan, I'd like to say we'd come down, chasing the playoffs, knowing that if we win, chances are with Aston Villa and Middlesbrough sort of within touching distance of us both having difficult games, we could get into the playoffs realistically come the end of Saturday. I think the issue for me will be whether key players can return from injuries or not. I think if we are still sort of with players out going into that sort of triple header against the 3 of the top 4 that I mentioned, a point wouldn't be the end of the world, especially with how Reading are playing, which I know may seem daft considering obviously your position in the table, but with the run you've been on, I'd take a point. But I'm going to score prediction-wise say that we'll sneak it 2-1. I think you will score. You've been scoring quite a few goals in recent weeks against the likes of Wigan and Ipswich, and I think you'll continue that. 2 of our players that are out are defenders. So I think you may exploit us there, but I think going forward we might just have a little bit too much. So I'd go with 2-1 to Preston.
Yeah, well, I've gone for a Preston win as well. I think, as you mentioned it earlier, but I think a lot of Reading fans actually have this one down as sort of one of the easier games that we've got in our run. We've still got a lot of very difficult teams to play, but I think because this one's at home, as you mentioned, Preston has sort of gone under the radar a little bit. I think some fans have this down as perhaps an easier game, but I'm going to go for a 1-0 away win. But just touching on that finally, briefly. Does that bother you at all that sort of teams are sort of seeing Preston as a bit of a, or they're thinking they're an easy picking, or is it sort of perhaps contribute towards you then surprising teams in games?
Yeah, I think definitely does contribute towards surprising teams. I think I used to sort of, especially when I was at school, I used to get really annoyed with people sort of underestimating Preston. Living in Manchester, quite a lot of my friends and family are United, City, Liverpool fans. It was always, Preston, a lower league team. What division are they in? Sort of brushes off that kind of thing. But I think as I've got older, I quite enjoy us going under the radar a bit and surprising people and not having the glitz and glam and the sort of circus around them that the other teams in this division do have. If we can keep on going under the radar and sort of chip away, it's ultimately a better feeling if you do sneak in sort of to the playoffs, for example, and then that coverage that comes with it. So as I've got older, I've learned to live with it and definitely enjoys going under the radar.
That's the thing. When we finished third a few years ago, there was very little coverage at all. I think a lot of the focus was on Fulham going into the playoffs. And then when we beat Fulham in the playoffs, I think that made that win even more sweeter. But my thanks then to you, James, for joining me on The View from the Town, and all the best at the weekend and for the rest of the season in the playoff push.
Thank you. Yeah, pleasure as coming on as always.
Get social with the boys.
Find them on Twitter
at the Tilehurst End
and facebook.com/the Tilehurst End.
Welcome back to the Tilehurst End weekend preview, looking ahead to Reading versus Preston. Before the international break, Tom, Reading's injury list was pretty hefty. Has it got any shorter in the last 2 weeks?
I think a little bit, yeah. In terms of back in full training, I think Yakola, Baldock and Renamoto are all back training again, which obviously Baldock and Renamoto have been out for quite a while, and Yakola really, but so that's good to have all them back in sort of contention. Whether they'll be fit enough to start the game is questionable on a couple of them, I think, but they're all back in training. And then in terms of the rest, Yeardom, I think, picked up a knock, had rolled his ankle, and he didn't go on international duty, so he's been training though for the last week, so they've managed to get him fit again, so he should be fine. And then aside from that, Omar Richards is still out he's got a knee problem. Who else we got on this? Got a long list of players there. Bodvarson's still out as well, and calf problem, is doing rehab in the gym. And then the new fresh injury is Ryan East, which is a shame for him. He's done a bad knee injury, twisted his knee, and he's out for the season now, which so he's just broken into the team. So it's a real shame for him. Bad timing. Probably would have been in the squad again at the weekend, you'd imagine. So to lose him now is it's obviously a real shame for him. But I think he's got a bright future. He showed in those couple of games that that he can fit into the team. So it's a shame that he'll be out for the rest of the season now. But hopefully Renamoto can come back in and sort of fill that spot, if you like. So apart from that, obviously the other one is Oliveira, which he's obviously picked up that injury. I think it was Asday, wasn't it? In the how long's he been out, Oliveira? Now he keeps picking up losing count really. Ipswich, the hamstring injury, against Ipswich. So I think he flew over to somewhere in Asia, I think, to get some treatment over the international break. I think the original report was that he'd be out for the whole season, but it sounds like now they've managed to somehow patch him up. I think Jose Gomez hadn't seen him when we saw him yesterday. I think he's due back to flying back in either Thursday or Friday this week. So, I think he's still going to be out for now. He hasn't trained or anything for the last 10 days, but I think the hope is that he can maybe play some part towards the last couple of weeks of the season, which would be a boost from what the initial prognosis was. But he's obviously still out for now, but somewhat positive news on him, I guess.
Yes, but plenty of conversation on social media. That picture of him, he's been over in China over the last couple of days with Eduardo Santos, who's been nicknamed the Miracle Doctor. He has a history of getting players back fit quicker than expected, such as David Luiz, Radamel Falcao and Moussa Dembele. So a lot of high-profile clients Eduardo Santos has. And it was first, obviously, as you mentioned, we might not see Oliveira for the rest of the campaign. But how positive is that, I think? Because obviously he's only on loan, Nelson Oliveira. He's only been at Reading for a couple of months, but he's obviously desperate to get back fit and try and help Reading, in their fight for to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously he had that horrible face injury as well, which kept him out, and he wanted to play pretty much straight away then, and he wasn't allowed to because of the doctor's orders. And he's picked up a couple of sort of knocks and niggles right from when he first joined. Really, I think he got taken off early in a couple of the games when he joined. He hasn't played all season. I think that probably just caught up with him a little bit, but whether that hamstring injury now is part of that as well, pushing himself a lot in these last few games to play, possibly it played a part. But Jose Gomez, yesterday he said that they've got a fee in place of Norwich to buy him if at the end of the season. So obviously a lot of that would depend on what league they're in and what offers Nelson Oliveira gets. Obviously, if he comes back and plays the last couple of games, he's probably made quite an impact around the league already. So if he plays well again, he might get other offers. But yeah, there is a sort of an agreement there. Sort of Gomez, he said they've got, his term was financial gymnastics. He said to make the funds available to be able to bring him in. So I think I think they're not going to be able to spend particularly a lot of money this summer by the sounds of it. So, but yeah, I think the hope is if they can stay up, they can try and persuade him to stay. And yeah, like I say, it's great to see from him as a loanee that he wants to come in and make an impact and keep Reading up. So. I think realistically it's probably not going to be until the last sort of couple of weeks of the season, but even that I think could be potentially crucial come those last couple of games. I'm sure Reading will still be battling relegation come that point as well.
If he scores a 95th minute winner against Birmingham on the final day, he'll cement himself into Reading folklore forever. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I think one of the main concerns actually when Oliveira came in was perhaps his attitude. I mean, he's had reported problems in the past. I mean, I know he didn't get on with Daniel Farke very well at Norwich, but you can't fault his commitment and his effort when he's come in to Reading so far. But what would your starting 11 be then, Tom, for the game against Preston?
So yeah, Martinez in goal, and then the same back four. I mean, a couple of them have had knocks. I think Yeardon, like you said, that ankle, he should be okay to play. Matt Miazga picked a bit of a knock on international duty as well, apparently, but I think he's okay as well. So hopefully he can keep his spot. And then Liam Moore and Blackett. If Rinomota's fit, I'd bring him straight back in. I don't think there's any reason not to, unless there's sort of a fitness issue. So I'd bring him in alongside Lewis Baker and John Swift. And then on the wings, yeah, obviously Callum Harriott went away on international duty. He's back and fine now. So him, and I'd go with Mo Barrow, and then Yaku Mete also went away. I think he was due back yesterday, but sounds like he's okay fitness-wise after international duty, so I'd have him up front. So there's not a huge amount of options up front still, with Bobas and Oliveira out, so I'd stick with Mete up there for now.
International debut for Yaku Mete, so congratulations to him and
Harriott,
and Callum Harriott, and Mark McNulty, if you're still counting him as a Reading player. Obviously on loan at Hibs, but made his debut for the not so successful Scotland during the international break. But pretty much the same team for me. Martinez in goal. The back four, as I say, is to be expected. I mean, it's probably quite pleasing that Yeardon stayed at Reading trying to get back fit instead of going out with Garner. I mean, I suppose the key decision for Jose Gomez does come in that midfield, where, as you mentioned, Rinomota's back in contention to return. I mean, would you throw him in? Obviously, you put him in your lineup, but do you think Gomez might throw him in straight from the start? Obviously, he hasn't played for coming up to 2 months now, so he might not be fully up to speed, but he's potentially so vital in there. I mean, we seem to speak every single week on this show about how weak that midfield is without Rinomota, and I think we heard from the Preston fan a few minutes ago about how their midfield is perhaps their strongest area, with the likes of Ben Pearson and Alan Brown. So how important is it that Rinomota sort of gets in there straight away?
Yeah, I'd say if he's fully fit to play, he should be playing. I think it wouldn't be worth risking him fitness-wise, but just as I say, we've spoken about this midfield so much that as soon as you have somebody like Rinomota fit and available, I think you have to get him in the team because he offers so much more that the others can't really offer, and they're obviously completely different players, but he just offers something different to that midfield. And like you say, with the Preston midfielders as they are, I think you need somebody in there to try and combat them rather than putting someone else in there who might not be able to cope physically with that. Obviously, Ryan East played recently, he's obviously out now, so you look at the other options, and I guess you've got Liam Kelly still, and you've got possibly Ajaria in there. But for me, if Rinomota's fit, I think he should come in and start straight away. And I think Gomez, he's a bit cautious maybe on sort of confirming that he will start, but I think he's been training for the last week or so, I think he should be, hopefully, fingers crossed, okay. If not, then he'll be on the bench, but hopefully he should be okay to start.
Yeah, I've gone with Baker, Swift and Ajaria in midfield, perhaps just on the side of caution when it comes to Rinomota, but from what you're saying there, perhaps just throw him in from the start, but certainly if we're getting overpowered in midfield, bring him on if he does start on the bench. Attacking wise, I'd have Barrow and Gareth McClear on the wings over Harriott, purely just because obviously he played with Guyana this week and only got back in the last couple of days. I mean, he might be fine, but obviously with his injury record, I wouldn't want to perhaps risk him from the start. And then probably Yaku Mete, as you mentioned, really the only option, perhaps other than Daniel Oder up front. But we could see Sam Baldock, as you mentioned, this weekend. It'll be interesting if we do. I think he's played only 27 minutes so far under Jose Gomez, and that was on Boxing Day against Millwall in Gomez's first game in charge. And Baldock's been injured ever since. But when he's back fully fit, Tom, does he play ahead of Mete in that central striker role? Obviously, 5 goals and 21 appearances this season, Sam Baldock. We did also, of course, see him play out wide on occasions under Paul Clement.
Yeah, possibly. I think he divides opinion a little bit amongst the fan base from what I've seen, but I think he can offer something a bit different. Obviously, in the recent home game, Mo Barrow started up front, so it's clear that Gomez isn't entirely sold on the idea of Mate as a centre forward, I don't think. So I think the opportunity is there if Baldock can get back fit. I think he's not going to be fit enough to start, like you say. He's not played for quite a while, but it sounds like he could possibly be on the bench if Gomez decides to put him on there. I guess it'll be either him or Loader, I'd imagine. I don't think both will probably be in the squad. But yeah, it's good to just have another option, really. So say Mate's the only one at the moment, him and Loader's not scored yet for Reading. Mate only scored that late goal against Wigan. His only goal for a few months as well. So with Bodvarsson out and Oliveira out, it's good to have another senior option in Baldock. And yeah, he obviously knows this level. He scored goals at the Championships. They got 5 already this season for Reading. So it'd be good to have him back. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's starting up front in the next few weeks. I think, like I say, whether Gomez fancies him completely yet, I guess he'll probably want to have a look at him in a game and see what he can do for him before he makes that judgment. But given who they've got available now, I think he'll get plenty of chances to play, even if it is off the bench to start with. And if he can contribute there, then I think he'll come into the team at some point sooner rather than later.
I think especially with the fact I think we've got 6 games in 21 days in April, so we'll definitely be seeing some rotation, especially over that Easter period, I think. But prediction time then, Tom, how do you see this Preston game going?
So I say I was going to go for a draw, but as I think you're going to mention in a minute, it's my final show on here, so I'm gonna try and sign out with a win. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 win. But yeah, I would have gone for a draw normally, but I'm going to go for 2-0 and try and be positive and sign out in style, hopefully.
Being out in a blaze of glory.
Exactly.
I think we'll be in for a tough. I'll mention that in a minute, but I think we'll be in for a tough game. I think even if Andy Rinomoto is back fit, I think that will obviously help. But I think I'm going to go we'll slip to a 1-0 defeat in this one. In terms of Reading's relegation rivals, Bolton go to QPR. Rotherham have a tough game at Derby. Wigan host Brentford, and Millwall travel to third place Leeds. So a few tricky games in there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Like I say, all the games for those teams at the bottom at the moment, they're proving difficult. I think obviously Rotherham at Derby have been a bit up and down, so they could fancy the chances could go there and get something, but they're obviously a lot better at home, Rotherham. So I think they'll pick up quite a lot of their points at home for the rest of the season. But yeah, it's gonna be the same every week. I think we'll look at it, and some of them will pick up a few draws. Most of them will probably lose most weeks, and it'll probably all come down to that final weekend of the season, and there'll probably still be 2 or 3 teams down there battling for it, and hopefully that one of them's not Reading, but it quite possibly will be. But
hopefully not Birmingham, if that's the case. Well, I'm not sure my nerves could take that.
Yeah, possibly not. But yeah, as I say, I think it will probably go all the way down to there, and Reading will probably drop in and jump out of the bottom 3 again a couple of times in that period. But hopefully this weekend, like you say, they can. You've gone for a defeat, but hopefully they can pull away a little bit. But we'll see. I think it's going to be a tough one, but you never know.
Well, as always, Mark Mayer will be back with the main show after the Preston game to assess how the relegation picture, I'm sure, will have changed early next week. And if you can't wait for your podcast fix until then, we've had 2 interviews go up on the site over the international break. One with Jose Gomez, which is a fascinating listen, really, about his route into coaching and his beliefs and his philosophy. And our chat with Jan Kermigan is up as well, where he sort of reveals what went wrong last season, amongst a multitude of other things too. There's also plenty of content over on the website at tilehurstend.com, including a roundup of all of Reading's players who represented their countries over the course of the international break. As mentioned, 3 debuts for Reading players, as well as an opinion piece on why relegation might be a good thing, whether you agree with that or not. But that would be an interesting read. But I would usually say we'll be back on this show next week, which is sort of half true. The show and I will be back to preview the trip to Hull, but sadly, as you mentioned, Tom, you will not be joining me. You're moving on from the Wokingham paper this week. You've got a richly deserved promotion to the Premier League, covering AFC Bournemouth, so Preston will be your final running game, and this very sadly is your last podcast.
Yes, I mean, it's all happened fairly quickly. I was glad to get another podcast in before I went. But so starting there on Monday down at the Bournemouth Echo, covering sport down there, including Cherry. So very much looking forward to that, and hoping to end it with a win for Reading this weekend. But yeah, I just want to say big thanks to yourself and Dan Wimbush initially for getting me in. So I hadn't really done anything like it before, but he managed to sort of help me along for those first few weeks. And yeah, it seems it's been, don't know how many shows I've done now. It's been quite a lot, but not particularly enjoyable in terms of the results. But yeah, it's been great fun. Thanks to both of you. Keep up the great work on the site. And yeah, let's say those interviews we did this week with Jose and Wokingham got a great listen. So well worth listening to them as well. I'm sure there'll be plenty more to come from you guys over the next few months as well.
Fantastic. That's very kind of you. You've been a great addition to the show. I'm not sure how many shows we've done, but I did a few calculations. We've done it for around 18 months now. Well, you did it with Dan for a few months beforehand. And then obviously Dan moved on, and I think we started in around October 2017. In that time, Reading have won just 17 games, 25 draws and 36 losses, scored 83 goals and conceded 119, which doesn't make for great reading at all. We've not had much fun to cover over the last 18 months, but obviously you've covered the club for a long time before that as well. Obviously it's been full of ups and downs.
Yeah, the first game I did was FA Cup semi-final in 2015.
It's quite the place to start.
Yes, the Federici, Alexis Sanchez goal. But yeah, there's been, let's say that the ups down season was obviously brilliant to cover, and sadly it's not quite gone to plan since then. But I say hopefully they can still stay up now, and I think under Jose Gomez they have got someone they can try and build something with. I think obviously it'll all depend on them staying up though, really. But if they do, I'm sure things will look a lot brighter next season. Obviously we've sort of said that before. I think that was the hope under Paul Clement, but I think now with the regime now and the way things are working behind the scenes to try and cut down the wage bill, etc., it's all sort of heading in the right direction. So as long as they can stay up, I think next season will look a lot different. And yeah, so I'll be keeping a close eye from afar on how things are going, and hopefully another exciting season like we had in 16-17. So yeah, that playoff semi-final will live long in the memory. I think both the legs really. Even I think the away leg, just getting the draw from that, I think everyone sort of started to believe at that point. I think before that everyone was obviously talking up Fulham, but to get the draw over there and then they get the job done at Medeski was two great days. And yeah, obviously Wembley didn't go to plan, but there's been a few good ones since then. Obviously,
was that your highlight? Do you reckon the playoff games?
Yeah, I mean, I think possibly even the first leg, because I say that to get the away goal and the away end when that Abita goal went in was quite something. And I think that at that point everyone suddenly realised that it could maybe be the year, because obviously in the other semi-final Huddersfield seemed beatable at the time as well, and obviously got the home win. And even, to be fair, even the Wigan game recently will take some beating in terms of games to remember. I mean, that was quite something. And the celebration at the end of that game as well really felt like a moment which hopefully if they stay up, people will look back at that one probably. So there's been a couple of quite a few defeats like you say, but quite a few good moments like that along the way as well. So it's been an interesting nearly 4 years now covering the club. Wow, so quite a lot of downs in the last couple of years, but before that plenty of highs as well.
You'll be very, very sorely missed on this podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking all things Reading with you. And as I say, a very, very well-deserved promotion to cover Bournemouth, and I really do wish you the best of luck, Tom.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for that. And like I say, it's been a pleasure to be on the podcast as well. I've had a lot of nice messages from people who've listened to it over the last week or so. Have sent me some messages since I said I was moving on, so that's nice from them as well. And so hopefully it's been a decent one to sign out on. Like I say, hopefully Saturday's game goes the right way, and the rest of the season does as well.
We'll still be getting your predictions for the rest of the season, though, so hopefully you can climb off the top spot and potentially get one right. I mean,
off the bottom spot, yeah.
I mean, I suppose it might well be fate if you get the result right this weekend in your final one. But fear not, the Weekend Preview podcast, as I say, will not be going anywhere. If you can put up with me for the rest of the season, I'll have a few of the Tilehurst End's finest voices joining me each week to preview the games, beginning next week against Hull, I think, and then come summer. We'll hopefully get a new permanent co-host in. So do listen in next week. But for now, thank you for listening to today's show. Back the boys against Preston, and come on you ours.
The Tilehurst End podcast by Reading fans for Reading fans.